Good afternoon, this is Gabriel Jack, and welcome to BJC Mitzvah Day number 106, part 3. A mitzvah day keeps your soul on its way. And we're continuing with the mitzvah, the obligation upon the Kohanim to sanctify their hands and feet when serving in the temple. They used the kior with the washing station, they did their hands and their feet, and the rabbis extended this mitzvah to all Jews to wash our hands before we eat. So let's see more about that. Although with regard to sanctification of the hands, the water must specifically be poured upon the hands, we do not require this with regard to the netilas yadayim, washing the hands for ordinary bread. That is, there is no requirement to wash the hands specifically by pouring from a vessel and not by inserting the hands into it. Now, although we require that the washing for ordinary bread be done with a vessel, i.e., one may not pour water from one hand to another, and the basis for that requirement is because we find that the washing for holy purposes, like washing the hands for the sanctification of the hands in the BJC Mikdash, the temple, does require a vessel, either the kior, as we mentioned, or another of the sanctified vessels of the temple as above. Nevertheless, it is only with regard to washing for a holy purpose that the merciful one, i.e. Hashem, God, excluded washing by inserting the hands into a vessel, as he commanded in regard to this mitzvah, from it Aaron and his son shall wash, again from the laver, from which we learn that they must wash by pouring water from it and not by putting their hands in it. But with regard to the washing for ordinary bread, we have no such exclusion, and therefore this particular law does not apply. Now he says here in the footnote that this view that one may wash for bread by inserting his hands into the vessel is disputed by other rabbis called the Rishonim from the 1200s, 1300s, right? So therefore it's not so clear. You always will be better off just using the vessel to wash your hands for bread. Aside from the requirement upon every person to wash their hands before eating bread, the sages required Kohanim to wash their hands before eating any food of Truma. Truma is special food that was designated for the Kohanim, for the priests. Indeed, as Chinuch, the author, will state, the requirement for all Jews to wash their hands before eating a bread meal was enacted in order to ensure that Kohanim would be accustomed to washing their hands before eating Truma. Since Truma is a sanctified food, the washing for Truma, and by extension the washing for all bread, is associated with the washing for the sacred avoda, the sacred service in the BJC Mikdash, the temple. Accordingly, Chinuch analyzes the distinction he just made between these washing requirements. Now, although the reason for the washing for eating ordinary food is due to an association with eating sanctified food, as the sages of blessed memory said in Chulin, that the enactment of the netilas yadayim, washing of the hands for all bread, was made due to its association with the required washing upon eating the sanctified food of Truma, still, we need not make them, i.e. the washing for holy purpose and the washing of hands for ordinary bread, completely identical in all their laws. Rather, it is sufficient for us to require washing for ordinary bread, and also to require that the washing be performed with a vessel based on this association with the consumption of sanctified foods, and to leave the exclusion of from it, stated with regard to sanctifying the hands in the temple, from which we learn that one may not simply insert his hands in the vessel to wash in its place. That restriction need not apply to ordinary washing as well. In fact, even with regard to Truma itself, where the hand washing required for food originates, the netilas yadayim obligation before eating, it is of rabbinic origin and is not of biblically mandated procedure. For a biblical law, there is no law of impurity or purification that applies to the hands themselves, but only to the entire body at once. Since the entire concept of removing impurity from the hands is completely rabbinic in origin and not an actual derivation of the sanctification procedure in the BJC Mikdash, there is no reason to apply all details of the sanctification to this rabbinical procedure. In other words, that's why, on the one hand, they're connected, the washing the hands before bread, but there's also a leniency that inserting them according to the Chinuch would also be considered before washing the hands before bread. Thanks for listening. A little bit late. We went a little over time with this one. We will continue with this mitzvah. To sponsor future mitzvah 36-100 of the gold. See you tomorrow.